No plan, no schedule, just an undefined urge to disappear for a while, or maybe to find something. He had always been a seeker, but he never knew what he was seeking. All he knew was that home had become too small for his thoughts, and Amsterdam, that strange floating city, felt like the perfect place to get lost. It rained the day he arrived. Not the kind of rain that forces you to hide, but the kind that makes everything look softer, older, slower. The air smelled like wet stone, roasted coffee, damp wood, and something else, something metallic, something unfamiliar. He wandered the city for hours, days maybe. No agenda, no expectations. He slept in shared hostels and cheap rooms above bars. He watched the water. He listened to the people, their voices like background noise in a movie he hadn't realized he was in. And slowly, something inside him began to unclench. It was on the fourth day that he found the shop. Not a flashy one, hidden behind a narrow alleyway near a bakery that smelled like burnt sugar and rye. The kind of place you don't stumble into by accident, unless you're supposed to. Inside, the walls were dark, wooden, posters from the 90s peeled at the corners. Dim lighting, smoke hanging in the air like an old secret. Behind the counter stood a man, slim frame, tangled dark hair, eyes like old ink. His name was Leo. Not talkative at first, not salesy, just aware. He didn't look at the boy like a customer. He looked at him like someone he had been expecting. They spoke. Not much at first, just simple words, small observations. But the boy came back the next day, and the day after, and slowly the conversations began to stretch. Time lost its shape inside those walls. They spoke about altered states, the illusion of time, the fragility of identity. Leo never preached. He asked, and his question made the boy feel like something ancient was waking up inside him. On the seventh evening, Leo made a suggestion, not loud, not forced, almost like a passing thought. "I'm cooking dinner tomorrow. You should join me." The boy hesitated for a moment, but something in Leo's voice, something calm, maybe even fatherly, made him say yes. He didn't question it, but maybe that was the first real choice that changed everything. The next night, as the city dimmed under the haze of twilight, he followed Leo through winding streets into a neighborhood that felt both lived in and forgotten. The apartment was above an old bookshop. Cold ceilings, dusty corners. Jazz played on a record player. Something simmered on the stove, rich, spiced, unfamiliar. They ate in silence. Not out of awkwardness, but respect. The kind of silence that only exists between people who don't need to prove anything. And then, after the plates were cleared, Leo stood, walked to a drawer, and returned with a small glass vial. Inside, a crushed green-brown substance, dry, like aged leaves, nothing impressive. But the look in Leo's eyes said otherwise. "This is Salvia," he said. "It's different." Leo didn't pressure him. He simply held out the pipe and waited. The boy stared at the dried leaves inside, trying to read something in them, like tea leaves or warnings. He had tried other things before, LSD, mushrooms, weed, but salvia, that was new. Strange name, strange energy. He took the pipe. The glass was warm. Leo lit it for him. The boy inhaled slowly, deep. The taste was bitter, herbal, sharp, like burnt mint and copper. 7 seconds passed, then 8. And then, everything collapsed. The world folded like a piece of paper. Not metaphorically, literally. The room bent into itself. The walls became soft and angular at the same time. The floor twisted upward. The ceiling turned into fabric. Sound didn't stop. It melted. He didn't fall, he peeled, as if he were being peeled away from himself, layer by layer. First his hands, then his thoughts, then his memory. He wasn't in Leo's apartment anymore. He wasn't anywhere. He was floating, no, stuck, in a space between dimensions, silent, endless. Not black, not white, just absence. Time didn't exist, not like a clock, not like something that ticks. It stretched, paused, laughed at him. Something was watching. He didn't see it. He felt it. A presence. Tall, ancient, amused, not evil, but far beyond good. Like something that doesn't even know what humans are, something that doesn't care if you live or die, because it's always existed and always will. Then, something changed. A scene appeared. He was in a room that looked like his childhood kitchen, but everything was wrong. The walls were too wide, the table was too long, the light came from nowhere. And there, at the table, he was sitting, himself but older, eyes tired, face pale, no recognition, just staring. The older version opened his mouth, but instead of words, a voice boomed, not from the mouth, but from everywhere. "You were never supposed to look behind the curtain." Suddenly he felt every mistake he had ever made, all at once, like a million needles piercing his chest, his spine, his brain. The weight of truth hit him. Or maybe it was guilt, or realization. It wasn't about the Salvia. It wasn't about Leo. It was about him, his choices, his fears, the lie he was living, pretending to search for meaning while running from his own reflection. He tried to scream, but there was no mouth, no lungs, only echo, then silence. Then, he opened his eyes. Back in Leo's apartment, sweating, shaking, breathing like someone who'd just crawled out of a grave. Leo was sitting quietly across from him. No smile, no concern, just stillness. "It's different," Leo said again. The boy didn't answer. He couldn't. Something had changed, something he couldn't unsee. A crack had opened in his perception, and no matter how hard he tried, it would never fully close again. He didn't sleep that night. Not really. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of the hostel, watching the shadows shift like breathing skin. His heart was calm. Too calm. Not numb, but detached. As if something essential had been burned away during the trip and left behind in that unnameable place. When he looked in the mirror the next morning, he didn't fully recognize himself. It was his face, yes, but something behind the eyes had shifted, like a door had been opened and left ajar. For the next few days, he wandered the city without purpose. The streets felt unfamiliar, like they had been rearranged slightly while he slept. Faces blurred, voices echoed. He didn't return to the coffee shop. He didn't see Leo again. Part of him wondered if Leo had ever really existed. Not in a paranoid way, more like a philosophical question. Had Leo been a person or a guide? A part of his mind placed there, waiting to show him something when the time was right. He never got an answer. What haunted him most wasn't the visions, not the peeling of reality, not the voice. It was the feeling that for a few minutes, maybe seconds, maybe eternities, he had seen everything. Not with eyes, but with something deeper. He had seen behind the curtain, and it hadn't been beautiful. It hadn't been terrifying either. It had just been. Pure, indifferent, unfiltered existence. Now, back in the physical world, everything felt smaller. Conversations, plans, ambitions, even his own name. He laughed once, softly, to himself. When someone asked him where he was from, it felt like a joke, like trying to assign a hometown to a ghost. On his last night in Amsterdam, he walked to a canal and stood on a bridge for almost an hour. He didn't think of jumping. He didn't think of anything at all. Just watched the water move. When he returned home a week later, no one noticed a difference. Not really. He still smiled, still nodded at the right moments, still answered when called. But inside, something was missing. Or maybe something had been added. A kind of echo, a split. He never told anyone about the trip. Not because he was afraid, but because he knew they wouldn't understand. Because even he didn't fully understand. All he knew was this: there are places the mind can go that it can't always come back from. Not completely. And sometimes, that's not a tragedy. It's a beginning.